Welcome to Unfiltered with Brenda Breland, where the only thing we take seriously is not taking life too seriously. I'm Brenda, mom, entrepreneur, straight shooter, and your go-to for saying all the things we've all been thinking. On this podcast, we're talking about life, business, and all the shit no one warned us about. Spoiler, I don't have all the answers, but I have a lot of opinions. Let's figure it out together, one unfiltered episode at a time. Welcome to another episode of Unfiltered. Today we have Audrey Bartnicke on, also known as Audrey Injects. How are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
I'm so good. I am really excited about this podcast. I feel like you have so much value to give when it comes to the aesthetic world, and this world is growing, girl. So tell us, how did you get into this? What made you get into aesthetics?
Honestly, it's such a popular question. And my first thing that I always tell people, because I feel like nurses are wanting to do this more and more now. I got so lucky. I got into it at a really good time. I feel like I was on that iceberg, like that tipping iceberg where it was like blowing up around here. We weren't saturated yet. So I feel like I got in at a really good time and I could like help make my name. But man, if I was getting in today, it's stressful. There's a lot of people. But I worked bedside. So I graduated from nursing school. I worked bedside. I did bedside for a little bit. Always had a passion for aesthetics. So while I was in nursing school, I did like event wedding makeup on the side. I actually worked in a med spa at the time, but I didn't even like pay attention to the Botox filler, that side of it. I was just kind of doing sales for them, doing makeup for them. And then when I got my first big girl paycheck, I got my lips done. That was always my promise to my mom. I was like, Mom, the second I start making money, I'm getting my lips done. And she was like, oh my gosh, Audrey. And so I did. I got my lips done actually by a really well-respected colleague of mine. And I was like, wait, I feel like I could do this. And so I like went back for a follow-up. I went back a few times. Like I got some Botox and like I was already kind of into that stuff. And at the time, the place I was going to, I straight up just like reached out to the owner. She had like posted that she maybe had some interest in hiring a new injector. And I was like, hey, I think I'd be really good at this. And she was like, well, if you're that bold to tell me that, she's like, we'll interview you. And she interviewed me and gave me my start. And I shadowed alongside her for months and months and months while still working my other job. And that's kind of how I got into it. Just being bold, like I tend to do.
Yeah, that's what I love about you, girl. That's why we vibe. You're very bold, and your personal brand speaks for itself, and I love that. So lips is the whole reason you got into aesthetics then, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up on that, like Kardashian, Jenner era, and I just always, it was such an insecurity of mine. And it wasn't like, I got my lips done, I was a totally different person. I just always knew that was huge insecurity. I had really, really thin lips, and I just knew, I was like, I just feel like this would make me so much more confident. And it did. It wasn't like I said, I wasn't a completely different person. At the time I got like a half syringe, and I don't even think anyone else noticed, but for me, it was like life changing. Like it gave me that boost, and I was like, I want to do this for other people.
Yeah, I love that. So you mentioned like growing up in the Kardashian era. So do you mind sharing how old you are? Because I think this is important.
I'm 26.
So I feel like this is like something that I think sets you apart, is like you are so young in the industry, but you have been able to create an authority for yourself in the industry, which I admire. And I think obviously this is why you do so well. And I know you have some things in the pipeline where you're going to be helping other people do what you do. So I want to like kind of preface or like kind of go into like, you want to help people feel better about themselves, but we know aesthetics, right? And me being in the wellness industry, aesthetics is very, or has been very taboo, right? And I honestly think that aesthetics and injectables, and whether it's facials or whatever it is, has a place in your overall health and healing journey. So talk a little bit about how you approach this conversation with people who are maybe interested in injectables, but they're like, I don't want to look like my face is frozen, or I don't want to look fake. How do you approach that, and what makes your approach a little bit different than some other injectors?
So, well, I think what makes me different, I mean, I'll be really honest with you. When I first started doing this as a job, I would get really nervous. Like I would pucker when someone asked me, like someone outside of aesthetics would ask me like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" I'd be like, like I don't want to say it. Like I'm scared because it was so taboo. I will say I think social media, TikTok has helped a ton. I do think it's becoming more normal. But how I approach it always is just like exactly my story, what I did for myself. If you have something that you're focused on and it's bothering you and you just want to feel better about yourself, you're going to carry yourself really different. You don't have to look a completely different person. That's not my goal. That's honestly not what I do. I feel like I say no a lot more than I say yes to people all the time. Like, and they love it. They hate it and love it at the same time.
Yeah.
They're like, I really want this. I'm like, you don't need it. And I'm not going to do something that you don't need. And I always tell people too, when you walk out of here, my name is etched on your face. So everything that I do, I'm very, very prideful, which is a blessing and a curse, but I'm very prideful. And I want you guys to go out there and be my billboard. Like I want to be proud of that. And so if it's something I don't agree with and that's not my style, I tend to be more conservative injector, then I'm not going to do it, you know? And so I think people appreciate that. And I think really just educating. And that is the hardest part. And I'm still growing in that department. I think we all do, but sitting your patient down and really educating them, like, why are we doing this? Why am I choosing this for you? And why you're not going to look like this person that you're scared of looking like on TV, you know? So I think that's just important. Constantly educating your patients, you know, telling them your credentials. And also, that's what I tell people all the time. What does your injector look like?
Exactly.
Do they look crazy? I mean,
Yeah.
maybe you should run for the hills if they're looking wild. But if you, like, I have the same standards for myself. I've gotten everything done. You name it, I've done it. I have everything in my face, every filler,
Yeah.
anything. I don't do anything until I tried it on myself. And so I feel like most people, unless you really know me, can't tell I have much work done. I'm like, so this is like, we're going to do the same thing. I have the same standards for you that I have for me, you know?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think just approaching it like that is really important.
I love that. And I love that you brought up like what does your injector look like? Because that's like
Yeah.
people will message me and they'll be like, I'm
Yeah.
going here, how like what do you think? I'm like, I don't know. Like literally, what does your injector look like? Like
Right.
or look in the office. Like because let's be
Yes.
honest, you're surrounded by people and there's it all meshes for a reason, right? So
For sure.
I love that. And I love that you focus on education because I do think obviously we know there's aesthetic injectors and businesses that's like one in one out, how fast can you go,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And I think also that's why you've been able to build authority and have such good client retention is because you've built those relationships, you educate your clients, and you're essentially joining them on like their aesthetic journey because it's normally not just a one and done thing most of the
Right.
time.
I mean,
Um,
I'm joining them on their life journey. I mean, my
yeah,
patients know that. I'm such an invested person, and I think that's why I love my job so much. You know, like I know everything that goes on in their life. We have like 20-minute therapy before we start our appointment with most of my patients, and you know, I message in. I'm like, hey, how's this going? And sometimes it's really good, you know, conversations that we have, and sometimes they're telling me like their low lows, and
yeah,
so I think that's important too. Like you really got to build that rapport because then they're going to be more comfortable saying like, hey, I didn't love this, or hey, I really want to try this, and can you tell me why? Whatever, you know.
yeah.
So, and you know that. I mean, with your clients too, you've got to build that like personal connection because they're not just your paycheck walking in and out the door. And if you think
No.
about it like that, you won't retain them.
Yes, I love that. They have to be like, you have to view them as actual fucking people
Right.
and not just, yes. And I think, let's be honest, like the type of people that you're working with want to build connection with you based on your personal brand and obviously knowing you. And I mean, I'll be honest, like most people don't want to just walk in and like get their face poked by someone that they don't
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
right? So I want to transition this a little bit into, this for me is built in your brand authority and how you've built your social media platform. And obviously, we know each other through Emerald. I work with Emerald, and then you obviously are a big asset there. So talk to me a little bit about how you've seen or how you've built your personal brand through injecting, but still working under a business. Because I think this is something a lot of injectors do not do well. And I think
Yes.
you do it very well. So I want you to speak a little bit on that.
Yeah. So I actually on the side I train new injectors. You know, I constantly am in that community with other new injectors, and I always tell them I'm like, you gotta show who you are. And I get it because that scared me a lot at first. I'm like, this is my injecting page. no one cares what I'm doing with my personal life. And I feel like the more I stepped into that role of like sharing what I do, like things that aren't even related to this industry. And it's good days and bad days. Yesterday I was posting about how, I've had the flu this week. That's not so pretty. Like, and I'll talk to a lot of new injectors and they're like, yeah, but people don't care. And I'm like, they do. Trust me. Cause it builds that, like, they know who you are. I have people come in who are new and they're like, oh my gosh, I have a black lab too. Like, what a random detail about my life that I've shared that people know about me because I choose to put that information out there. And we have a connection now,
Yeah.
like that's beyond aesthetic. It's not superficial. And I think kind of building those bonds with people before they're even in your chair is really important. But it's something I really enjoy doing. And I think that's the hard part, is like you can't force that upon someone. Like you have to have the passion for that. Like my husband will, walk by and he's like, are you filming yourself again? I'm like, yeah, I love it. Like talking to my phone when I'm talking to my followers, I feel like I'm having a conversation.
Yeah.
Like it's not for show. Like I'm doing it because, I'm posting and then we're having conversations and they have really good input for me, whether it's kid related. I mean, oh my gosh, my world was rocked this past year when I had a baby. That's been really hard. And I have plenty of followers who are moms who give me great advice, and vice versa. So I think you have to be willing to put yourself out there.
Mm-hmm. I
And
love
that's
that.
kind of my biggest advice. Yes, it's important to post before and afters, and you want to educate people. I do have two Instagrams. I have a personal and I have a professional, and the personal has gone by the wayside. I'm like, I at this point, I should probably just delete it because I've merged so much of my life. Like, this is my life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an injector. I'm a mom. I
Yeah.
have a family. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like it's so much easier for me to put everything into one because that's who I am, so just
Yeah.
putting yourself out there. I know it's scary, but once you start, it's kind of fun and it just becomes like second nature.
100%. I think you are a little bit of a diamond in a rough, and I feel like in the aesthetic industry because not very many people like they go and join. You're working underneath a business, right? And
Yeah,
they go in there and they're like, "Oh, we'll let the business run our page," which is fine to an extent, but
right.
you guys like as injectors or even nurses or plastic surgeons or whatever in this industry, you have to own your own personal brand, and that's what's sustainable in your business.
Yeah, and I'm glad that I did that from the get-go because yes, first off, you never know what's going to happen. And
100%.
I've
You have to
I've
own your
learned that
leads.
lesson
Yeah.
multiple times. And I've also done both. I've worked under businesses before. I've done my own thing before, and so I think it's really benefited me to kind of carry my own personal brand, but also realize like this is a bonus, right? You have people like now we have you, now we have Nathan. People helping us out with social media has been a godsend because let me tell you, I mean, you know better than anyone. Social media is
Yeah.
a full-time job.
Yeah.
And if I could give any advice to any new injector, I think a lot of new injectors will go into this and like, oh, this is, obviously better than working in the hospital, better hours, better pay. All those things are true, but my job is pretty much 24/7. Like I do go home from the clinic. I have off days, but I don't get to put that side of my life aside like someone working a typical job. I'm constantly working on the next thing. I'm educating myself. I'm responding to clients. I'm charting. Like
Mhm.
it's kind of a lot, to
Yeah.
balance.
Yeah.
But having a business that you're working alongside, that you're working underneath, it's a huge bonus. I mean, they help you in so many ways. But yes, I think especially someone like you said coming to poke your face, you
Yeah.
don't want to know their business they're working under. You want to know
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
That's where they're going to be comfortable, and so you kind of have to keep up with that personal brand. But like
Mhm.
I said, once I started doing that, it became second nature.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother me at all. It's not a chore anymore. Like to me, it's kind of an outlet. It's fun.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think and that's one thing is like people need to understand that like they may not be you and they may not enjoy doing it, but it still is an essential part of growth. And I
Yeah.
think what's I think is so interesting, obviously doing Emerald's marketing and having you under Emerald is like it's kind of crazy to me how much your vibe is like the true encompassing of what emerald is. So it's
Yeah.
just normally you don't have that. And I think that also is, like obviously Lane is not the person who's on social media as much anymore, but like you guys are so
Yeah.
similar in the vibe and those
Yes.
things. So it's so interesting, and to see, obviously, to see how when you take content, when you create content, I can message Nathan and be like, hey, I need this, like this is great, give it to me,
Yeah.
or vice versa. So
Yeah.
I love that. So I want to talk a little bit about like what are some things that like are just like non-negotiables that are being done in the aesthetic industry that maybe you will not do? Is there anything that like is like trending that you're like, nope, not for me?
Oh my gosh, I feel like all the time. I
Yeah.
mean, I think that's what makes your job even more tough is, before, I don't think when I started social media was quite as, it wasn't what it is right now, and that was only what, 5 years ago, but that was kind of COVID times and we kind of were just about to boom. And so I think the hardest part is trying to keep up with what people see on the internet, because they come in thinking they know something. And I'm never going to discredit that, right? I appreciate when people have done their research, but everyone's different, so I think having to combat some of those rumors or myths, like that has added a whole new layer. And Lane and I talk about this all the time. It has added a whole new layer to our jobs,
Oh yeah.
of trying to go through those things, or like, hey, no, I know that she did this, but like, what is this going to look like in a year? Like, what is this doesn't
Yeah.
actually look good.
No.
Like, I think lips are probably my hardest thing, with people is a lot of times people just want these huge lips and they'll show me pictures of people and I'm like, no, that doesn't look good. I'm like, this is not cute. Like, we can't
Like this
let
is a
you.
bad idea.
I'm like, her fillers everywhere. I'm like, so, and I think it's just hard because now we have retouching on social media and we have people who look absolutely perfect. And I'm like, hey, that's not real,
You're like
and
that's filler and a filter. Like
right.
that I can't do
Or,
one of those.
yes, or you're looking at, celebrities with money to do plastic surgery, and that's really hard too. And so I think one of the most important aspects of my job is like, before I even touch you, are we going to set realistic expectations?
Yeah.
Because if we can't, then I can't treat you. I'm
Yeah.
not your provider, because we have to have expectations that this takes time. If you want this to happen overnight, I can't treat you.
Yeah.
Like, this is a commitment, and I would hope that people think I'm not a salesperson. I don't ever want that to be my job. And sometimes I like wish I could shake my patience and be like, I'm turning your money away.
Yeah.
Do you realize I'm like saying no to money, which obviously is a driving factor for all of us. We all have to live in this world. And I don't know that people always see it that way, which is super hard. But yeah, I think just combating things that people see that they think they need or what they think they're going to turn out to be is probably the hardest part of my job,
Oh, girl, TikTok is wild. I mean, I think we even talked about like the whole
Yeah.
there's more, and we'll get into one that I think is a little crazy. I went down this rabbit hole, and you're probably gonna be like, why the fuck is she bringing this up? But I think it's funny. Is so like the filler migration thing. That's something that is like so big right now. Everyone's
Oh yeah.
freaking out, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, educate yourself, you guys. Like half of these people don't even like there's no credentials there. They're literally telling you something someone else heard. And it's
Right.
like been watered down and changed a million times by the time you
Yes.
saw it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one, so this one's crazy. Have you seen like the trend now with the labia filler? Like it's
Yeah.
all over TikTok.
Oh yeah.
So have you had anyone ask you to do this or like talk to you about this?
I have not. I mean, I've talked about it before, and I don't think it's a terrible idea. I was actually talking to a colleague the other day about this, and I told her, I said, well, I did some earlobe filler a couple
Yeah.
weeks ago, and like, I kind of think that would be
Similar?
very similar.
Yeah.
I mean, both injecting, but also like, I think the tissue would probably be similar. As we age, that tissue tends to it changes,
Yeah.
right? So, and the point of like earlobe filler is not to change necessarily how it looks, but to like rejuvenate that tissue.
Yeah.
And I do think there's a place for that. Like, I'm all for aesthetics moving in the direction of wellness and not just being like a vanity thing.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
there's totally a spot for both, but I mean, I kind of like it. I feel like we're moving into that direction of like utilizing some of the tools in our toolbox for other things besides just like your lips and your cheeks. I'm here for it. I think if you have this is what I tell people. If you have an injector who is educating themselves and has the credentials to do that,
Yeah.
go for it.
Yeah. Well, I think of like I guess I whenever I heard it, I never considered like that's something that would bother because it hasn't bothered me. But I would assume people who like let's be honest, like having a child changes a lot of things down there,
It sure
okay?
does.
It changes a lot of things. Having
Yeah.
multiple children changes it
Yeah.
even more. So like I'm like, okay, well if that's bothering you and like you
Right.
could do something as simple as like an injection of filler in that area and it like totally makes you feel good, like why the
Yes.
fuck not? But yeah, I
That's what
just
I'm saying.
yeah,
If it is truly, and that's part of our job too. We have to assess, okay? Is this something like they're kind of insecure about, they want to feel better? Do it. Like I tell people all the time, I have no shame in my game, okay? If there is something out there that's going to make me feel better and I have the means to do it, I'm doing it.
yeah.
Okay?
I
I'm
love that.
absolutely doing it. But you have to, on the flip side of that, I've definitely had patients in my chair before that I'm like, this is a deep rooted insecurity that I am not going to be able to. Like, this is something else. This is like a therapy thing, you know? And I think that's a really tough conversation to have too. But yeah, there's endless possibilities out here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you want to feel good about something, like, I think we're in the era of do it. Who
Yeah.
cares? Like, stop caring what people think. It's not their business. And you just carry yourself better, you know? Like, if
Girl.
I can do things to go out there and feel confident and carry myself better, I'm going to succeed.
Yeah.
Like
100%.
those two things go hand in hand, you know, whether it be your vagina, whether it be your lips, like your boobs,
All
do
of
it,
it.
girl.
Yeah.
I'm all for it.
I love it. I freaking love it. And I will say, like, I'm very open. Like, if I'm doing anything to my body, I'm also in the, the space where I feel like
Yeah.
as someone in this space, we have to be very honest and open about what we do.
Yes.
And that's something like anytime I'm like, it's time for my filler, it's time for this. And like, I'm sharing it. And like you said, it's empowerment, right? Like if you
Right.
feel good about it, like don't fucking go for it. And there's someone out there like you and injectors that you can go in and be like, hey, here's what I'm struggling with. Can you just like tell me what your thoughts are?
Yes.
Like, what can we do? Because oftentimes you may not even have an understanding of what options are out there or how you can place filler or, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, there's so
Yes.
many different ways. And that's what you guys are so good at, you and Lane, is like sitting down and listening to what people are hearing or what their goal is and being like, okay, like here's what we can do to fix that. And
Right.
then allowing yourself, like joining them on that journey. So I love that. But yeah, I was like listening to TikTok and I'm like, labia filler. I have got to go down this rabbit hole. So I
It's
did.
about to be all the rage.
I did. I know, right? We're gonna have to change the rooms a little bit. So you got
You're gonna
stirrups
need
to
some
do
more
those.
privacy in there.
I know. I know. Okay, so talk to me a little bit about like what is your goal in business? I know, obviously I know you work under Emerald, but you have some things in the pipeline that you're trying to or wanting to do. So talk to me like what are your goals as an injector?
Yeah. I think obviously always continue to grow and educate myself. I really thrive on learning. And I sat down with Lane and Brittany the other day. We kind of had like our yearly like goal setting meeting. I am very much the type of person, if I feel stagnant, I get in a really, really weird rut, you know, and I feel like I constantly need to be challenged in order to feel like I'm succeeding in life, you know. And one of my biggest passions is sharing this with other people. You know, like I want everyone who wants to do this job to do it and have the confidence to do so. I love talking to new injectors. It's like one of my favorite things to do. I do train for a filler company, and that has really been like a good spark for me. I'm like, okay, I love this. Like I could talk to people about this all day long. I could talk your ear off. And so I kind of think I want to dive into that more. And that's kind of where our vision is going, you know? And I think it's so interesting because people will ask, well, you're going to train people and give your pearls to people who are in the same community as you. And I too had this mindset that everyone who is in a certain mile radius from me is my competition. And I feel like once you can shift that mindset to like, you might inject the exact same way as me, and that's great. You know, I can teach you, but you're not me. You know, like once you gain, I think it's just gaining confidence. And honestly, I get more confident every year, and I kind of think that just comes with age, you know, and I think that comes with just time and changes in your life. But getting that confidence to like, hey, no one else is me.
Yeah.
No one else is going to have the same rapport as me. No one's going to educate like me. No one's going to do that. And having like those thoughts and just shifting your mindset. Cause man, I've had to do a lot of mindset shifts since I started in this industry, because if you don't, it'll eat you alive.
Yeah.
This is not, I think a lot of people think that maybe this industry is like rainbows and butterflies. And I'm like, whew, you're in for a rude awakening if you think that, because it's tough and it takes a lot of grit. I think that's like and that's been my word this year that I'm kind of sticking to, is just grit. And then man, you throw life in there,
Yeah.
you have kids, you have a family, you have other things you have to focus on. It's like, whoa, this is tough. But if you just keep with that focus of like, you have a community there, like we have other injectors around us that like, you could think of them as competition, or you could think of them as like people who could help you with so many things. What if you have an emergency? What if you need something?
Yeah.
Like I don't want to have isolated myself to the point of like, I feel like I can't reach out to others. What if I do see something? This happened to me not that long ago. I had a patient and she had a really interesting pull of a muscle, and I just like couldn't figure it out. And I texted another injector that I know, and I sent her a picture and I said, hey, I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this and I'm going to draw it out for you. And we drew on a picture, and I was like, but I just need someone who has been doing this for years and years to tell me like, this is correct.
Yeah.
You can't have so much pride that you can't ask for help, or you're never going to grow. You're not going to get anywhere. So I think that's really my goal for this year. Shift my mindset. Some things are out of my control, but I'm just going to keep growing, and I got to really tap into like what makes me happy. And I think that's sharing my passion with others, educating, people on how to get into this industry. Both, I think, yes, looking at skill, like, hey, yeah, this is how you inject a glabella, but also like, what does it really take to have the passion and grit to like succeed in
Yeah.
this industry? Because that I feel like is almost more important than focusing so much on your skill. Like the skill will come, but if you don't have that initial like
Foundation.
determination,
Yeah.
it's not going to work,
Yeah.
and I don't ever want to see someone fail. So
No, I love that. I love that you mentioned, like viewing people as competition. Because I think any business owner or someone who is, I view all injectors as a business owner, regardless if they're working under someone or not, because
right,
they are their business. People come back to you because
you
of
are.
you, not because the name on the door. That's just not the way the industry works. So I think for you, you basically said like you're getting rid of a scarcity mindset. Like you're
Yes,
not worried about outside things. You're not worried about that. You're just focused on building community and connection. And I think all of that, regardless of what business you're in, is so important. And I think it's going to be huge for you this year, which I'm so excited for.
and it's so hard. Oh my gosh, like I say things sometimes, I'll talk to people and they're like, oh my gosh, you're so confident. I'm like, well, I'm just hoping that that leads the way and that my mind really does go there if I say it confidently enough.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I've had this conversation with myself over and over and over again. Like, you got to stop thinking like that. And that's where I go back to like, your mindset is just so important. But I feel like
Mhm.
that has been my goal
Yeah.
going into this year. I'm not going to do that to myself and go down these rabbit holes that, cause me to, overlook certain things or think too far into my worth. Like, I've built this path for myself, and the only way I'm going to get to where I want to be is to just keep going. And you look at people, I always have a lot of respect. I don't know about you, just whatever. When people are like let's say you're listening to a podcast or a conference or a video, and you have someone in whatever field they may be in, like, hey, I'm so and so. I've been doing this for 15 years. I've been doing this for 20 years. I've been doing this for 30 years. The only way they got there was they just kept going.
Yeah.
Time. And you can't rush time. You can't change it. So you just got to wake up every day, show up for yourself, show up for your passion and whatever it is that you're doing, and you just keep going. And I feel like if that's my mindset, I think I'll accomplish everything that I
Yeah.
want to in this life,
Yeah. I love it. Mic drop right there. I love that. Okay, I want to shift a little bit to a little bit of advice for people that are listening, because I'm sure we'll have, people in the industry and people who are maybe
Yeah.
interested in aesthetics and aren't getting into it. So let's kind of go by age group here, and I'm going to
Okay.
challenge you a little. So like mid to late 20s. What
Okay.
are like, if you're not feeling, and we're going to go on like based on like you're not feeling maybe as youthful and you're just kind of feeling a little meh. Like
Yeah.
what are the top things that you would recommend that person do or inquire about to start maybe
Absolutely.
feeling a little bit better?
Skincare is like my number one. And I have this conversation a lot as I tell people, I'm like, if you're coming in here and investing, let's say like $500 into your Botox, but we're like not doing any skincare, I'm like going to be straight up with you. Like, I'm probably wasting your money, like skincare, I think is important. I, this is controversial. I started doing preventative Botox. I was 19 when I first got, now that is really young. And I'm not saying everyone has to do that. I had this obsession with it, and I turned it into a career. So I'm like, it's okay. But I think preventative tox is really, really important. I think that is my biggest complaint that I hear within that age group. I'm doing my makeup and I feel like it's settling into these lines, blah, blah, blah. And so I think doing a little bit, you don't have to go 0 to 100. Because I'll also have girls come in and they're like, I want to do my cheeks and my lips and my chin and do my Botox. And I'm like, you need to slow down. You're going to have like, you're going to look in the mirror and not recognize yourself. And you're way too young to be doing that. And I think framing it up to, okay, if we take these really small steps because you're at this age right now, and we kind of just build on it, as we get into different points and seasons of the aging process in our life, it's going to be really easy to maintain,
Yes.
And so I think honestly, it's probably one of my favorite age groups, just because they're starting at such a good time that we never have to have the really hard conversation of maybe it's a little late for this,
Yeah.
and you really get to grow with them.
Yeah.
And that's my age group, so I feel like I can understand it the most.
Yeah, 100%. So do you think then, like, really, like, once you get like I like after your 30s, do you feel like that's when people are like, you're considering filler for those patients more often than under 30, or where is your age range there for like filler? Is there one?
Not anymore. And let me tell you why, because Ozempic is such a thing. And I have seriously, like, I love it. I think it's a really great tool for people who have been struggling, to lose weight. I have a lot of patients who have PCOS who are using that and they've lost a lot of weight. So now I think it just depends on not so much your age, but like what's your lifestyle looking like, because obviously, I mean, I'm young and I never really dealt with true volume loss, but I had a baby, I lost a bunch of weight, and I remember I told Lane, I was like, I have no cheeks.
Yeah.
And so we did my cheeks not that long ago because I was like, I mean, things just change as your body goes through changes. Some people have kids in their 20s. Some people wait till their 30s, 40s, and that's fine. But I think you can't chalk it up to a specific age group anymore. Genetics play a huge factor. I have some women who come to me at 40 and I'm like, oh my gosh, you look great. You've never done anything in your life. And then I have some people who we've been, because they didn't know any better. They were outside for 20 years of their life without sunscreen or a hat.
Yeah.
So I think it's really not so much age and like, what is your everyday look like? Like, how are we taking care of our body outside of getting filler and Botox?
Yeah. Yeah. So with that filler, like the volume loss, is there like a point, I guess, like at what point is someone like wanting so much filler in their face because they've had so much loss that like that's where it's like, is that like a actual facelift? Or do you guys even still do PDO threads in the office?
Sometimes, I'll be honest, they're not my favorite treatment. I would rather, and Lynn and I talked about this morning actually on our call. I am super happy to refer people out.
Yeah.
If there are some things, and I feel like plastic surgery is still really taboo too, and people don't want to do that. And I almost think you have to tread lightly when you have that conversation because you don't want it to be offensive. But I always come at it from a standpoint of like, let me show you costs. Let me show you what getting to your goals with me is going to look like. It's going to be more expensive actually. And it's going to take so much maintenance. And I never want to like, excuse my language, I never want to half-ass something for someone, So I always just try to keep it really real with my patients. Like, hey, I'm happy to do some little things to hold you over. I'm not going to get you to where exactly you want to be. I think we need to look at other options. I think one of the biggest complaints I hear is patients who need a bluff. They have this skin, they're like, hey, I really want you to raise this. And then we kind of have to go into that education of like, it's not possible. Like, I can't raise skin. This is working on a muscle. Or yes, people who have like, some people, even if they've lost weight, they just have excess skin in this area. And that's one of my favorite things to refer out is I'm like, hey, chin lipo is like really easy. It's actually not terribly expensive. You'll spend a lot less than you will with me over the next 3 years.
Yeah.
and it is a game changer.
Yeah.
It's a confidence booster. So I think just knowing when to say no, and I get it from like a standpoint of like, this is my job. You're watching money walk out the door, but I've taught myself it will come back.
Yeah.
It'll come back, and it'll come
No
back in
scarcity.
tenfold.
Yeah, I
No,
love it. I love
no.
it. So, I know like in the space now, there's a lot of talk about natural aesthetics.
Yeah.
So, Sculptra, okay? I feel like this is something that you love.
Love.
You talk a lot about it. Like kind of educate people who are listening to this and be like, "Hey, I don't want a filler. I don't want that." Like, what options do they have that are more natural ish or natural when it comes to aesthetics and keeping that youthful look and maintenance?
Yeah. This is another thing that Lane and I talked about this morning on our call
Yay.
because we were kind of like trying to come up with packages and some fun things for our open house that I won't spoil because I do think aesthetic medicine is really moving in that direction, and I'm so glad. I think the hardest sell on it, and so I always start this conversation with my patients. This is not instant gratification. You will not leave here today with the results that you're going to have in the next, 3 to 6 months. But I'm not putting a band-aid on something. Like, we're doing something super long term that you won't regret. So I think it is hard this day and age to kind of grasp that for people because people do want instant gratification. And I get it. We're all kind of at that point in life, because you can get it.
Yeah.
It's so readily available to have instant gratification, but for some people, I'm like, it's just not your best option. Like, this is it. And so I've really been shifting a lot of my patients over to that mindset. Like that conversation that we were talking about earlier, filler migration's all the rage. And I'm like, well, let me tell you why. It's because there's injectors out there who never say no. They're doing filler. The second someone realizes something, they're doing filler over and over and over and over again, and never stopping to think like, hey, maybe if you're metabolizing this so fast, maybe we should go in a different direction.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, that's when you're going to run into a problem. Like, these people are doing mass amounts of filler multiple times a year.
Which
No
is
one's letting
wild.
you do that here. Right,
It's
right.
so wild.
It's wild.
I have like, I think even I've been over a year since I've had my filler done, and it's like I'm still fine. So it's so wild to me when people are like, I've gone back, I've got filler twice. I'm like, for what? Like,
Right.
you clearly
And
need to find a better injector, probably, but
you just, I think bottom line is you have to find an injector that will say no to you, because I do think too, and I have no problem telling my patients this. They'll come in and they're like, no, I feel like my lips are so small. I'm like, girl, no, they're not. They haven't gone down since I last seen you 6 months ago. You don't need anything in those
it's like
lips,
when you're like before, like, here's what it looked like when you came to me. Here's what you look like
Yes.
now. What
And
are you
that's
not
why
seeing?
pictures are so important. And I
Yeah.
take pictures for that reason, because this is my one thing I tell people. When I touch your face, when I touch this area, you're going to look at it more. And I've learned, and I joke about this, if something happens in people's lives, it's my fault. Okay? If they get Botox and their nose is runny, or they have a specific headache, it's on me. And I've learned to accept that, because that's just where people's mind tend to go. If they come up with a new wrinkle and it's been 5 years, I'm like, no, that's just aging. But you have to learn to have those conversations,
Yeah.
very delicately. But you have to just bear that responsibility and know that people just don't know what they don't know, and that's your job, is to educate them here. And so I don't know. It's just, you gotta learn to laugh at these things. But yes, anti-aging, that true PRF, Sculptra. I think that's where medicine's going. We're actually looking into some real. I can't say anything, but we're looking into some really fun other things.
Girl, I hope I am like, we're channeling Lane right now. We're like, yes, please.
Lane is sick. Lane and Kelly are about sick of me asking for things and spending all their money. But they understand where I'm coming from. But yes, we have some really fun things that we are looking into that are up our sleeves, that I have been begging for, and I think it's finally about to pay off. But I just would hope everyone knows, like, we're here. We see where this is going, we know. And it's harder than you think to bring something new in. to a practice, and I think people don't realize how many steps that take. We're not going to do anything new on a patient. We want to have tested all that out first and worked out all the kinks, but we're listening, we're studying on what's coming, we're setting aesthetic trends, and we are determined. And that is something I really love about Lane is she's a yes person,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She's like, if you bring something to her and you have a good case for it, I mean, she's going to make you work for it, which I also appreciate.
Yeah.
She doesn't play around. But if you have a good case for it, she's like, all right, let's look into it and let's make it happen. I don't know how we're going to make it happen, but we're going to make it happen because we want to be the best in this industry. I mean, I have no shame in saying that. We want to bring the best. We want to provide the best results, and that starts when people walk in the door.
100%. And I think Lane and, well, not just Lane, I think everyone inside of Emerald's doors, to be quite honest with you, has over the last 6 months set the tone for what Emerald is. And I think there's no hiding the values, the way that you guys want patients to feel when they walk through that door. There's no question as to how you're working with patients and the type of patients that, are coming to you guys. So I think it all is speaking for itself very loudly, in my opinion, even in the Northwest Arkansas area and really the 4-state area, if you ask me. So I'm really excited about what's coming. I know, shameless plug, do you want to kind of like hint at the open house that's coming up or?
Yes. Yeah, so we have some fun things coming. We have our open house March 20th. That's a Thursday. And that's something, it really is hard to come up with those specials, packages, things that people want. We're having open houses twice a year and we're constantly taking people's feedback and like, okay, how are we going to be better than last year? Because sometimes that's hard to do. But I think, what we really focused on this morning is like, we've done a lot of like filler and talk specials in the past, and that does really well. People love that, right? But I think let's move towards really packaging these anti-aging treatments and not just a one-time thing.
Yeah.
Because that's where I always tell people, I'm like, if you're going to do this once, like, don't waste your money. It's not worth it, And so creating something for patients that makes it more feasible for them to be back in our chair more often so we can really achieve what we're trying to achieve. That's going to be our goal with open house this year. And I think people will really appreciate that. So
yeah,
we're very excited.
Yeah, I'm so excited for that too. And I think, like you said, like you guys are coming for the industry, you're staying up on top of the trends and you're being open to the things that patients and people are bringing to you, which I love. And I think, like we said, the natural trend is here and we know that. And, with Sculptra, with the Emerald Sculpting Facial, with some things that are possibly in the pipeline, it's going to Emerald's truly going to be a one-stop for all of those things, no matter where you're at and you're
and that's our goal
journey. Yeah.
Yes. And not even our goal with not just aesthetics, because we have DPC, which I feel like DPC has slowly, just in general, direct primary care has slowly been becoming more of a thing in the last few years. But man, I tell people about it all the time. I'm like, listen, I don't get any commission telling you to sign up for DPC. Okay, I'm just obsessed.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed, especially now that I have a family and I'm in the doctor a lot more. I remember this was like months and months ago. Blair had like an ear infection or something, and we spent 2 hours in the waiting room at her pediatrician. And Nicole called me and she's like, Audrey, what are you doing? I was like, I didn't even think to bring my daughter to you. And she was like, why? She was like, and so everything else from now on, I call them at 6 a.m. I'm like, can I bring Blair to take? She has this, she has this. They're like, yes. Abby looks at her. She gets her proper medication. We're in and out in 15 minutes. And Nick has come he's not going to the doctor. Let me tell you that. Men don't go to the doctor. It is not their thing because it's a waste of their time. They need this to be easy. And so even Nick has utilized them a lot in the last year because it's easy. And honestly, it's way less complicated and ends up being cheaper than going through insurance because insurance is a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
And so I think the fact that we can offer all these things under one roof, I do your Botox. Do you have the flu? Come see Abby and Nicole. It's just so well-rounded, and I feel like people appreciate that.
Yeah, it literally is like if you had an injector, a nurse, a doctor, like everyone like in your family. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Like because
Yes.
yeah, I love it. I can't say enough good things about Emerald in general and just DPC. I'm with you.
Right.
Like if you have kids and you do not have a direct primary care membership, you are missing out. Like I can't even, there should be no question. Take my money,
No question.
go. Like yeah, it's necessary. So well,
Yeah.
can you let everyone know where to find you, how to
Yeah.
connect with you, all the
Yeah.
things?
I do most of my communicating and, all my advertising on Instagram. That's my main platform. We have been working really hard on Facebook because I know that's a big market for people. I'm so bad at Facebook. But yeah, Instagram, TikTok, Audrey Injects, super simple. I'm actually really good at responding to DMs on my Instagram. I feel like I do my best to respond to those within like 24 hours. It doesn't bother me. I know that's a boundary thing for some people and it really irritates them. I actually don't mind it at all. I think people have questions that, maybe they're not ready to come face to face and have that consultation and they just kind of need a little in. And so I always tell people, I'm like, if we're doing a full face consultation, just come in because that will make my life easier and your life easier. But if you have a question about a promotion, about things we offer, I'm happy to answer those questions. And 9 times out of 10, I'm going to post them overly. You're gonna be annoyed with how much I'm posting these things. Like you won't miss anything the way we post on Instagram, but I post all my work on there. I try to post, multiple times a week. That's another big thing I tell patients. Are you looking at their social media? Oh, what do their patients look like when they leave? Like because this is real. This is what people look like, and so if you're comfortable with that, I want to be vetted.
Yeah,
So I tell people, I'm like, dig. Like,
yeah.
you're welcome to dig on my Instagram and ask me my credentials. I don't mind the hard questions. I think you're right. I am very young. This is my 5th year in this industry. And it is it's tough for people. They're like, you're 26. And I'm like, listen, I've accomplished a lot at 26, so hear me out, but I hope that my work speaks for itself. And most importantly, I hope that my clients feel good when they walk out and they have that rapport with me to tell me anything that they need. And then they're going out and, word of mouth, telling other
Yeah.
people. I think that's how I built my business, and I'll just continue to keep doing it.
I love it. I love it. Well, it has been so good chatting with you, girl. I appreciate
Yes.
it. As you guys go follow Audrey, pop into her DMs, make sure she'll send you the message to get on Emerald's text messaging. So like you don't ever
Yes.
miss a sale, any of like the wild stuff that only goes out to text messages, all of the things. But again, thank you so much for joining me, girl. I appreciate
Yes.
it.
I had so much fun. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And as always, let's keep it unfiltered. That's it for this episode of Unfiltered with Brenda Breland. If you're loving the real talk and unfiltered vibes, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review. It helps more badass people like you find the show. Got questions, stories, or just want to say hey? Let's chat on Instagram. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, remember, life's messy, but you don't have to do it alone. Keep it real, keep it unfiltered, and I'll see you next week.